Measure for Measure, a short story by Dalpat Chauhan. At the edge of the village, far from the center of its life, stood about a dozen small and campers, and campers, and campers, and campers, and campers. It was a still, tranquil afternoon and not a leaf stirred. The harvest was on and the peasants were all out in the fields cutting the stalks of grain. At the entrance to the colony, a mongrel was licking the wet mud around a puddle of water. It shook its head, flapped its ears and stretched its front legs. Suddenly straightening up and wagging its tail, it glanced up at the sky. It opened its mouth to back but restrained itself walking into the colony. It stopped before Gokul's hut for a moment, went over to the next hut, lay down in front of it and panted leisurely, its tongue hanging out from its mouth. Gokul, who had been ailing for a long time, was sleeping on a cot in the small veranda of the hut. His body looked like a necklace of bones. Nenyo was at a home to look after him. The rest of the huts in the colony were empty. 8 years old was 8 years old. He wore only a dirty jacket which barely reached down to his waists. His hands were muddy, his eyes twinkling bright, and his enthusiasm for his little fancies and games unlimited. He could have lent a hand to his parents, but someone had to remain at home to look after Gokul. Nenyo was now busy with a toy cart made of jowar stem. Gokul coughed. He longed for a puff of smoke. With a supreme effort he managed to sit up but could not get down from the cot. Though he felt an urge to urinate, he suppressed it, but he badly wanted a smoke. "Oh, Nenyo, where have you gone?" There was no reply. Gokul raised his voice. "The little rascal won't stay in the house for a minute." "Hey Nenyo, can't you hear me?" "What is it, Bha? Why did you call me?" Nenyo asked his grandfather as he came running in. "Fill the hookah, my boy. The dung cakes are in the cowshed." "Light them." "Yes, Bha." Nenyo busied himself with setting up the hookah. He changed the water in the tube, removed ash at the bowls and ash at the bottom, and put them back in the grate. He took some tobacco from the pouch hanging on the peg on the wall and made a ball of it. He then took out a cake of smoldering dung from the cowshed, placed a couple of unlit cakes on top and blew hard on them. Ball of tobacco, placed the lid over it and began filling the smoke chamber with the embers of the burning dung cakes. This done, he quickly drew in a couple of puffs. Gluck gluck, called out from his cot. "Hey Nenyo, what are you doing, puffing at the hookah on the sly? Come here, you rascal. A great one for smoking hookah, aren't you? Hey, can't you hear me?" Nenyo came in hurriedly, handed the hookah to Gokul and went back to play with his toy cart. "Ho, is there anybody here?" The hoarse voice came from the direction of the entrance to the colony. The dog leaped up with a start and ran towards the entrance. Then the swish of a kin and the wound of blow falling on the dog was heard. Then a mouthful of abuse directed at the dog and its howl of pain followed by short bark. Gokul shouted at the dog to come back. The dog came running back, halted in front of Gokul's hut and shook its head vigorously. "Nenyo, oh Nenyo, look who has come." Not getting any reply, Gokul turned over on his sides and resumed puffing at the hookah. He tried to move his body on the cot but found it too painful. Nenyo was still playing with his toy cart. The sound of staggering feet turning in the direction of Gokul's hut was heard. A human shape reeking of alcohol came into view. Gokul was familiar with the expression in the bloodshot eyes. "Ova," he sang, "Bha, come in, come in. How are you?" Gokul tried to be as polite and humble as possible. "What a surprise, what brings you here, Bha?" Vahisang was a man in his middle age. He was drunk most of the time, and it appeared that now he had a bit more than usual. His clothes were dirty and ragged. The turban on his head was in no better condition. He held a thin cane stick in his hand. Seeing Gokul lying on the cot, Vahisanga's eyes grew wide in astonishment. He did not respond to Gokul's greeting but made a contemptuous gesture with his left hand. "Oh dear brother scavenger, what do you think you are going? Sitting coolly on the cot, saying how are you, what brings you here, damn smart aren't you?" Gokul gaped at Vahisang, terrified. "Are you listening, you scoundrel?" Smoking hookah leaning against the wall. He felt the urge to urinate becoming uncontrollable. Folding his hands in a gesture of submission, he beseeched. "I have been suffering from fever, don't have the strength to get up. That is why I am lying in bed. You are a kind-hearted man, Bha, you can understand it." Vahisanga's wrathful expression did not soften. "Oh ho, is it so, my brother scavenger? What kind of fever, my dear? Because you have got 3 sons, you think you can boss people around. And you're stupid babbling at me." "No Bha, please, it is only because I got this fever." Gokul had not finished when Vahisanga's cane stick swung in the air. Whack! Whack, one blow after another. "Take that, you scum!" Whack! Whack! The cries of pain stopped as Gokul, trying to fend off the blows unsuccessfully, fell to the floor. But Vahisang, his eyes too blurred to notice it, did not realize it till the tap of the stick on the empty cot caught his attention. His hand became still as he saw Gokul lying prostrate on the floor. "Now you have arrived, you bastard. There in the mud, where you belong. Still wagging your tongue. It needs a stick to make you fall in line." Thuk. Vahisang spat out a mouthful of saliva with a vengeance, gave the whole hut a searching look, and went out. The mongrel sitting outside had already started moving away, its tail tucked between its hind legs. It was some time before Gokul opened his eyes. Tears blocked his vision and he groped in the mud. On the far shore of the river of tears, a face loomed up like an apparition, a face exactly like Vahisanga's. It scraped on the grave of the memories. He heard a voice from the depths, from the unfathomable depths, calling him, "Gokulba, oh Gokulba. Open the window, I am standing here in the dark." Vahisanga's father. Gokul muttered as a dark, terrible night of Chapani days broke out from the locked cells of his mind. "Gokulba, it is me. Mad easing. I tried everything. No good. Our luck has turned for the worse, brother Vaho, his mother, and me. The 3 of us haven't had a bite to eat for the last 3 days. The whole village is deserted. There is nothing to get anywhere. That is why I have come to you." Gokul heard the phantom voice in a daze. Hunger had made it hoarse. "Mad hub ha. Welcome, but I don't have anything to give you. Not a grain. Some konkanias are all I have. But you can't take them, of course. I'll take them, brother. Konkania are better than nothing. If Bhagwan has willed that we should eat carrion, let it be. I don't want to die of hunger." Half concealed from the eyes of Nania's grandmother, Gokul filled the apron of Mad Husanga's kurta with kankaniyas. The aroma of the dried meat boiling in Madhusanga's kitchen flooded his nostrils. "I won't forget you as long as I live, Gokulbai." A clamour of voices drowned his senses. "Vaho, Vahisang." Gokul tried to spit out the taste of blood in his mouth in vain. A fit of coughing seized him, but was drowned in a spasm of pain which split his body. He fainted again with the apparition of Vahisanga's grotesque face before his eyes. When he came to, his lips and tongue were parched. He suddenly remembered that Nino must be somewhere around. Nino, oh Nino, bring me some water. Nino, who had been watching everything in stunned silence, was shaken out of his stupor by Gokul's pathetic voice. He had not been able to make anything out of what had happened, for this was his first exposure to pain and suffering. His toy cart lay abandoned in the yard. He could not make out what Gokul wanted, for the pain which was racking his body had crushed his words into an indistinct moan. Dada I'll call Bapu, said Nino, and ran towards the fields where his parents were cutting grain stalks. The mongrel, who was back in his niche now, took a cautious step forward, cast a pitiful look at Gokul, tucked its tail between its hind legs and stated, sniffing the air. Notes. Chapani ya Dukul. Famine of 1956 which devastated Gujarat. Kankaniyas. Pieces of dried meat. During the Chapaniya it was the people of the upper castes, who were mostly vegetarians, who suffered most, for nothing grew out of the parched earth. The Dalits and Adivasis were better off because they managed on the flesh of sheep and cattle. It was common for the members of the upper castes, tormented by hunger, to go to huts of Dalits and Adivasis after nightfall and surreptitiously eat dried meat. About the writer, Dalpat Chauhan. Dalpat Chauhan, born on April 10, 1940, is a retired government employee. Along with Nirav Patel and Praveen Gadhavi, he initiated Gujarati Dalit literature with publication of Dalit Panther's Kalo Suraj, The Black Sun. His poetry integrates Sanskrit diction with dialect of North Gujarat. His collections of poetry are Tapakai, 1983, and Kianchi Suraj, 2001. He has been conferred with more than 15 literary awards, including those of Gujarati Sahitya Parishad, Gujarati Sahitya Academy and Narsimite Mehta Award for all literary genres. He was editor of Dundubhai, 2000, and Vanbodhi Varta, 2000. A widely published writer, his novels are Malik, 1991, Gid, 1991, Balbankalun, 2004, and his collection of short stories Munharo, 2002. He has also scripted radio plays Patan Gondrethi, 1987 to 1988, Anaryavarta, 2000, and Harify, 2003. His translated short story Buffaloed was published earlier in Muse India. Famine of 1956 which